Welcome to Miss Scarlett. Subscribe and don't miss out on Patreon. Have fun! The office was filled with mundane morning chatter, phones ringing, and keyboards clicking. A typical workday at Bradshaw and Associates, where the routine rarely varied. Until today. Mike sauntered through the hallway, a mischievous glint in his eye. He'd arrived early, armed with bags from the local party supply store and a plan that promised to shake things up. His target? The ever-so-serious Jeff, whose strict adherence to rules and regulations had become legendary around the office. Peering around to ensure the coast was clear, Mike slipped into Jeff's office. He surveyed the austere space, devoid of personal touches save for a single-framed diploma, perfect canvas for his masterpiece. With swift, practiced movements, Mike set to work. Sheer pink curtains unfurled over the blinds, casting a rosy glow across the room. Lace doilies found homes on every available surface. Silk flowers in pastel hues sprouted from vases that moments ago hadn't existed. Stepping back to admire his handiwork, Mike stifled a chuckle. But he wasn't done yet. From his bag, he produced a delicate china teacup adorned with roses. This would replace Jeff's usual stark white mug. And instead of Jeff's preferred black coffee, a frothy pink concoction that smelled suspiciously of strawberries and whipped cream. The pièce de résistance came last, a gauzy scarf draped artfully over Jeff's chair and a decorative fan perched atop his computer monitor. Mike could barely contain his glee as he imagined Jeff's reaction. Footsteps in the hallway sent Mike scurrying for cover. He ducked behind a potted plant, another new addition to Jeff's office, and held his breath. The door swung open. Jeff, impeccably dressed in his usual charcoal suit, stepped inside. He froze, briefcase halfway to the desk, mouth agape. "What in the world?" Jeff's voice came out as a strangled whisper. He blinked rapidly, as if trying to dispel some bizarre hallucination. Mike bit his lip to keep from laughing out loud. He watched as Jeff circled his desk, fingers trailing over the lace doilies in bewilderment. "Is this some kind of joke?" Jeff muttered to himself, picking up the china teacup with 2 fingers like it might bite him. Unable to contain himself any longer, Mike burst from his hiding spot. "Surprise!" Jeff whirled around, nearly dropping the teacup. "Mike! What is the meaning of this?" Grinning from ear to ear, Mike spread his arms wide. "Just thought your office could use a little feminine touch." Jeff's face cycled through a range of emotions. Shock, confusion, anger, and finally, a grudging sort of amusement. "Very funny, Mike. Now help me take all this down before anyone else sees."
"Oh, I don't think so,"
Mike said, backing toward the door.
"In fact, I think everyone should see your fabulous new decor."
Before Jeff could protest, Mike darted into the hallway. "Hey everyone, come check out Jennifer's office makeover." Jeff lunged after him, but it was too late. Curious heads were already popping out of nearby cubicles. "Jennifer?" Sarah from accounting asked, peering into the transformed space. Her eyes widened. "Oh my!" More colleagues gathered, barely concealing their laughter as they took in the sight of Jeff standing amidst the sea of pink and lace. "Looking good, Jennifer," Tom from IT called out, giving an exaggerated wink. Jeff's face flushed a shade that nearly matched his new curtains.
I didn't...
He stammered, looking desperately around for an ally. But Mike had already worked his magic. He'd spent the past week dropping hints to various coworkers, ensuring they'd be primed to play along when the moment arrived. "Oh, honey, don't be shy," Lisa from HR cooed, stepping into the office. "We're all so proud of you for finally embracing your true self." Jeff's mouth opened and closed like a fish out of water. He shot Mike a look that could have melted steel, but Mike just grinned back innocently. This isn't... Jeff tried again, but was cut off by a chorus of supportive comments. You're so brave, Jennifer. Pink really is your color. We should totally have a girls' night to celebrate. Trapped in a whirlwind of well-meaning but misguided support, Jeff found himself at a loss. His usual composure crumbled as he struggled to find the words to explain the situation. Mike, meanwhile, was thoroughly enjoying the spectacle. He'd known Jeff would be flustered, but this was beyond his wildest expectations. The usually unflappable man looked positively lost. All right, Mike finally said, taking pity on his colleague. Let's give Jennifer some space to adjust, shall we? We can plan the celebration later. As the crowd dispersed, Jeff sagged against his desk, looking shell-shocked. Mike, he said, his voice low and dangerous. You are going to pay for this. Mike just laughed. Oh, come on, Jennifer. Lighten up. It's just a bit of fun. Jeff straightened, smoothing down his tie.
This is highly unprofessional.
I expect all of this to be gone by lunchtime.
Sure thing, boss,
Mike said with a wink. Whatever you say. But as Mike sauntered out, whistling cheerfully, Jeff couldn't shake the feeling that this was far from over. Throughout the morning, a steady stream of colleagues found excuses to pass by Jeff's office, each offering their own brand of support for his transition. Jennifer, darling, Marjorie from marketing drawled, popping her head in. That scarf is simply divine. We must go shopping together sometime. Jeff, who had been attempting to focus on a spreadsheet, pinched the bridge of his nose. Marjorie, I appreciate the thought, but... Oh, hush! Marjorie interrupted, waving a manicured hand. No need to be modest. We're all thrilled for you. Before Jeff could protest further, she was gone in a cloud of perfume, leaving him more baffled than ever. As lunchtime approached, Jeff found himself dreading the thought of venturing out to the break room, but his growling stomach eventually won out over his desire to hide. Steeling himself, Jeff made his way down the hall. Conversation in the break room stuttered to a halt as he entered. All eyes turned to him, a mixture of curiosity and barely concealed amusement on every face. Jeff cleared his throat.
Afternoon, everyone,
he said, trying to sound as normal as possible. A chorus of giggles erupted from the corner where Sarah, Lisa, and Marjorie sat huddled together. Jeff felt his cheeks burning as he fumbled with the coffee maker, desperately wishing for the floor to open up and swallow him whole. Jennifer, sweetie, Lisa called out. Come join us. We were just discussing our favorite face masks. Jeff froze, coffee mug halfway to his lips. He turned slowly, finding the women looking at him expectantly. Mike, seated nearby, was watching the scene unfold with undisguised glee. I don't really... Jeff stammered. Oh, don't be shy, Sarah insisted, patting the empty chair beside her. We won't bite. Feeling trapped, Jeff reluctantly made his way over to their table. He perched awkwardly on the edge of the chair, clutching his coffee mug like a lifeline. So, Jennifer, Marjorie began, leaning in conspiratorially. We were thinking of having a girls' night out this Friday. You simply must join us. Jeff's eyes widened in panic. Oh, I couldn't possibly... Nonsense, Lisa interjected. It'll be fun. We can get mani-pedis, maybe do some shopping. As the women chattered excitedly about their plans, Jeff found himself growing increasingly flustered. He shot a desperate look at Mike, silently pleading for help. But Mike just raised his eyebrows and smirked, clearly enjoying every moment of Jeff's discomfort. I'm not sure... Jeff tried again, but his protests were drowned out by the enthusiastic planning. And we simply must do something about your wardrobe, darling. Marjorie declared, eyeing Jeff's suit critically. No offense, but it's a bit drab. Jeff looked down at his perfectly pressed shirt and tailored jacket, feeling oddly defensive. What's wrong with my clothes? The women exchanged knowing glances. Oh, honey, Sarah said, patting his arm. You've got so much to learn. As the conversation devolved into a detailed discussion of fashion do's and don'ts, Jeff found himself listening with a mixture of confusion and reluctant interest. He'd never given much thought to his wardrobe beyond ensuring it was clean and professional. But as the women debated the merits of various styles and colors, he found himself wondering if maybe his usual attire was a bit boring. You know, he found himself saying, surprising even himself, I've always wondered about those, what do you call them? The shirts with the flowy sleeves? The table erupted in delighted squeals. Blouses, darling! Marjorie exclaimed. Oh, you'd look fabulous in a nice silk blouse. Jeff felt his face grow hot as he realized what he'd just said. He glanced around the break room, mortified to find several other colleagues watching the exchange with amused interest. Mike, who had been quietly observing, suddenly spoke up. You know, Jennifer, he said, his voice dripping with mock sincerity. I think I have just the thing. My sister left some clothes at my place last time she visited. I bet they'd fit you perfectly. Jeff opened his mouth to protest, but found himself cut off by a chorus of excited agreement from the women. Oh, that's perfect! We could have a little fashion show! Jennifer, you're going to look amazing! Trapped in a whirlwind of enthusiasm, Jeff found himself nodding along, unable to find a graceful way to extricate himself from the situation. As the lunch hour came to an end, and people began filtering back to their desks, Jeff remained seated, feeling dazed. What had just happened? How had he gone from being the straight-laced, by-the-book Jeff to Jennifer, the newest member of the office girl gang? Mike lingered behind as the break room emptied. He approached Jeff's table, a smug grin on his face.
Having fun yet, Jennifer?
Jeff glared up at him. This has gone far enough, Mike. It's time to end this ridiculous charade. But even as he said the words, Jeff felt a strange reluctance. The attention, while embarrassing, was also oddly flattering. For the first time in years, he felt like the center of attention, like people were actually interested in him beyond his ability to crunch numbers and meet deadlines. Mike seemed to sense Jeff's internal conflict. His grin softened into something almost sympathetic. Look, man, he said, dropping the teasing tone for a moment. I know this started as a
prank, but maybe it's not such a bad thing to let loose a little. You've been wound so tight for so long. Maybe Jennifer is just what you need to break out of your shell. Jeff opened his mouth to argue, but found he didn't have a ready retort. Instead, he sighed heavily. I don't even know who I am anymore, he admitted quietly. Mike clapped him on the shoulder. That's the beauty of it, Jeff. You get to figure it out. And hey, if it turns out Jennifer isn't your thing, no harm done. But who knows? You might surprise yourself. With that, Mike sauntered off, leaving Jeff alone with his thoughts. As he slowly made his way back to his still pink office, Jeff found himself considering Mike's words. Maybe there was something to this after all. Maybe, just maybe, it was time for Jeff to step out of his comfort zone and see what lay beyond the strict boundaries he'd always imposed on himself. Settling back at his desk, Jeff's eyes fell on the gauzy scarf still draped over his chair. After a moment's hesitation, he picked it up, running the silky material through his fingers. Then, with a quick glance to ensure no one was watching, he draped it around his neck. Okay, Jennifer, he muttered to himself. Let's see where this goes. As the afternoon wore on,
Jeff found himself navigating a strange new reality. Colleagues who had previously barely acknowledged his existence beyond a curt nod in the hallway were now going out of their way to engage him in conversation. "Jennifer, love the scarf," Tina from reception called out as she passed his office. "Really brings out your eyes." Jeff felt his cheeks warm at the compliment. "Oh, thank you," he stammered, unconsciously touching the soft fabric around his neck. Even Mr. Bradshaw, the normally stern company president, seemed affected by the change. He stopped by Jeff's office late in the afternoon, eyebrows raised as he took in the transformed space. "Jenkins," he said, using Jeff's last name as always.
"I must say, this is unexpected."
Jeff scrambled to his feet, his heart pounding.
"Sir, I can explain—"
But Mr. Bradshaw held up a hand, cutting him off.
"No need, Jenkins. Or should I say, Jennifer?"
A small smile played at the corners of his mouth.
"I've always said this office could use a bit more personality.
Carry on." As Mr. Bradshaw strode away, Jeff sank back into his chair, feeling slightly dizzy. Was this really happening? Had his straight-laced boss just tacitly approved of his new persona? The rest of the day passed in a blur of pink-tinged confusion. By the time 5 o'clock rolled around, Jeff found himself both exhausted and oddly exhilarated. As he gathered his things to leave, a tentative knock at his door made him look up. Sarah from accounting stood in the doorway, looking slightly nervous. "Hey, Jeff?" she said, stumbling over the name. "A bunch of us are going out for drinks. We were wondering if you'd like to join us?" Jeff hesitated. Normally, he avoided after-work socializing, preferring to head straight home to his quiet apartment. But today had been anything but normal. "You know what?" he heard himself saying. "That sounds great. Just let me grab my scarf." Sarah's face lit up. "Fantastic! We'll meet you in the lobby in 5. As Jeff made his way to the lobby, scarf artfully arranged around his neck, he caught sight of his reflection in a window. The man, or was it woman, staring back at him was barely recognizable, hair slightly mussed from running his fingers through it in exasperation throughout the day, a hint of pink in his cheeks, and that incongruous scarf adding a touch of whimsy to his otherwise staid appearance. For a moment, Jeff felt a wave of panic. What was he doing? This wasn't him. He should go home, forget this ridiculous day had ever happened, and come back tomorrow as his usual, proper self. But then he saw his colleagues waiting by the elevators, chatting and laughing. Mike caught his eye and gave him an encouraging thumbs up, and Jeff realized that for the first time in years, he was actually looking forward to spending time with his coworkers. Taking a deep breath, Jeff straightened his shoulders and strode towards the group.
"So,"
he said, surprising himself with the confidence in his voice. "Where are we headed?" The group cheered, clearly thrilled that Jennifer had decided to join them. As they made their way out of the building, Jeff found himself swept up in animated conversations about everything from the latest office gossip to fashion tips. "You know, Jen," Lisa said as they walked, linking her arm through Jeff's, "I have the perfect shade of lipstick that would look amazing on you. We should totally do a makeover night." Jeff felt a moment of panic at the thought, but pushed it aside. "You know what? That actually sounds kind of fun." The words were out of his mouth before he could stop them, but to his surprise, he realized he meant them. There was something oddly liberating about this new persona, about letting go of the rigid rules he'd always lived by. As they entered the bar, a trendy spot Jeff had always considered too loud and flashy for his tastes, he found himself actually excited about the evening ahead. He'd spent so long being serious, responsible Jeff. Maybe it was time to see what Jennifer had to offer. The night unfolded in a whirl of colorful cocktails, laughter, and increasingly outrageous fashion advice. Jeff, or Jennifer, found himself the center of attention, soaking up the camaraderie and genuine warmth from colleagues he'd barely spoken to before today. "You know," Sarah slurred slightly, several drinks in, "I always thought you were kind of a stick in the mud, Jeff. But Jennifer? She's a riot!" Instead of feeling offended, Jeff found himself laughing along. "Maybe Jennifer's been hiding in there all along," he quipped, surprising himself with the ease of the banter. As the night wore on, Jeff found himself relaxing more and more into this new role. He laughed at jokes he would have once found inappropriate, joined in on gossip he would have previously avoided, and even let Marjorie apply a swipe of her lipstick to his lips, just to see how it looks. Looking at his reflection in the bar's mirrored wall, Jeff barely recognized himself. Hair tousled, cheeks flushed with laughter and alcohol, a smear of pink lipstick on his mouth, and that ever-present scarf adding a touch of femininity to his rumpled suit. But the biggest change was in his eyes. They sparkled with a life and energy he hadn't seen in years. As last call was announced and the group began to disperse, Jeff found himself reluctant for the night to end. For the first time in longer than he could remember, he'd truly enjoyed himself, letting go of his inhibitions and just being. Mike, who had been watching the transformation with a mixture of amusement and genuine happiness for his colleague, approached Jeff as they left the bar.
"So, Jennifer,"
he said, his tone gentle despite the teasing use of the name.
"What's the verdict? Was today as terrible as you thought it would be?"
Jeff considered the question seriously.
"You know what, Mike? It wasn't. It was enlightening." He paused, struggling to find the right words. "I've spent so long being who I thought I was supposed to be. Today, I got to be someone else. And it was freeing."
Mike nodded, a rare moment of seriousness crossing his usually jovial face.
"Sometimes we all need a little shake-up to figure out who we really are."
As they parted ways, Jeff heading towards his apartment and the others dispersing to their various homes, he found himself wondering what tomorrow would bring. Would he walk into the office as Jeff, pretending this day had never happened? Or would Jennifer make another appearance? For the first time in years, Jeff felt a sense of anticipation about going to work. Whatever happened, he knew things would never quite be the same. And surprisingly, he was okay with that. Climbing into bed that night, Jeff realized he was still wearing the scarf. He started to take it off, then paused. With a small smile, he left it on. Tomorrow was a new day, and who knew what it might bring. But for tonight, he was content to let Jennifer linger a little longer.
Thanks for watching, my girlies! Be sure to check out Patreon for more!